and stuff.
Yep. I don't want to disqualify myself from further Pagan panels, but I should mention that the only pop culture that I actually participate in is watching old vampire television shows with my girlfriend.
Well, wait.
And sometimes watching Xeno with my boyfriend, yes. But
Furthermore,
that's it.
Let's argue the topic of pop culture. What does it really mean to be pop culture? Because your definition of pop culture is not the same. I'm sorry, Druid. Side conversation.
Okay.
You know, just once I figured I'd admit I don't have anything intelligent to say, so I'm not going to say anything of what happens. Intelligent things get said. Thanks a lot for spoiling everything.
You're welcome.
Fourth question. Do you believe pop culture has been damaging to paganism in any way? And if so, how?
I would argue throughout history, pop culture has been damaging to every religion. I would argue that in every culture, there is something that you don't approve of, and some portion of your pop culture portrays it very badly. I would argue that it is more than just religion, that it is all groups. Any way you can identify somebody as not being like you, such as gingers who have no souls.
Kiss my ass. Kiss my ginger butt.
But that's exactly the point.
I do too have a soul, not just own it.
Okay, but my point is that I don't think that pop culture has been more damaging to paganism than pop culture has been damaging to anything else in general. And I think that we are shifting slowly away from as damaging of portrayals as it has been in the past, or in the farther back past, or in the farther back past, where pretty much we needed to kill all of the pagan people. Nowadays it's just like, oh, you guys are kind of weird, and maybe you smell funny and play a lot of D&D,
Thank you.
but you're not necessarily the worst. Maybe there's something okay-ish about you. You know, I mean, like I would say that a lot of the portrayal of witches that I have seen in television and movies and stuff has moved away from, yes, we worship Satan, towards things like we work with the forces of nature and we have some sort of balancey thing that we got to do, and then some other junk, and it doesn't always make sense, and usually like ridiculous artifacts and silly prophecies. But that's okay. That's a bit better than you are the incarnation of evil and should be killed. Now it's
mostly harmless.
mostly harmless.
Unless you're ginger.
Pat, as a positive portrayal in Bewitched, which still sucks, but cute nose movement.
Exactly. You know, I mean, there's definitely, well, I mean, it's also, nowadays, more witches are smoking hot than old, shriveled,
Once upon a
and
time.
wrinkled. Or, they start off old and shrinkled. And then they, like, drain the life out of a young child and they become hot for the rest of the movie. Sorry, I like those folks.
I like that word, shrinkle.
Shrinkle. Yeah, well, no, because you know how old people sometimes get shorter?
Oh, yes.
Like the Queen of England.
Like the Queen of England.
Her glasses
right?
and hats get
Definitely shrinkle.
Okay, good.
That's why they throw water on the Wicked Witch in Oz.
To, like, rehydrate her?
Yes!
Okay.
Spoiler alert, if you've seen this week's episode of the
Once upon a time.
Once Upon a Time,
Yep.
they do something similar where
Okay.
she gets back to something hot all of a sudden.
Huh.
Again. No, it's the same thing out the
So anyways, my point there was that I think that yes, sometimes it gives people a bad impression. I think that pop culture does that for every group ever. And I think that over time, pop culture has gotten less terrible about every group that they interact with. Although, you know, it's still not perfect. We're allowed to have Hispanic people on television without bleaching their skin first. That's an improvement from like the 1940s.
Yeah, gingers still have no soul.
I can't remember her name. What was the name of that actress though? Because she's like
Rita
famous.
or something?
Rita?
Lola?
No, Rita Hayworth.
Moreno?
Is it Rita Hayworth? And
Yes.
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 Rita Hayworth, who, you know, was Latino, had darker skin and dark hair, and had some procedures done in order to be white enough to be a television, in order to be a movie star.
Yeah, she was in What's That Story, right?
I don't.
She was in What's That Story, wasn't she?
That's not Rita Hayworth.
That wasn't-
That's
that was-
Rita Moreno.
Either way, oh, okay.
Marino, actually.
Doesn't matter the specifics of the people, but the point is that I think that the portrayals are getting better, and that over time, popular culture is becoming more tolerant of diversity, whether that diversity be whatever. And as a religious minority, we are benefiting from that whole thing. What? What's wrong? What did I do?
I just got
No, what's that face?
Lady
Did I just
Gaga.
steal your whole answer?
I just realized Lady Gaga's Discordian.
Oh yeah.
Did I not sit up at the last Pagan Panel and say that I thought Lady Gaga was Eris?
Yeah, but I forgot.
Oh, through the heart. Through the heart. I thought I was memorable.
And you're
Moving on. It's just.
Okay, we'll go, because I have nothing more to add to his, absolutely not.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I don't have any let's talk about, like, you know, I mean, I agree with Pat in the sense of, you know, pop culture never gets it right. They'll try to get it right. The best you can hope for is it interests people enough as a gateway drug, as mentioned, so that who is interested in it bothers to do the proper research and figure out what the reality happens to be. I think, as an inverse, one of the best portrayals is, you ever seen the movie Practical Magic?
Yes.
That was just two people who happened to be in the community, they happened to be witches, they happened to do magic. It wasn't that big of a thing, and they were coming out of the broom closet, so to speak, and all the rest, you know, and obviously to make it more interesting, hijinks ensued, but it wasn't, you know, Candyland was meant to be like very practical, very, you know, how it would work in real life. It was, you know, that kind of scale, you know. And so I thought that that was a wonderful portrayal of pagan-like things, versus something like Hocus Pocus or something like that.
Yeah.
Where, okay, we're witches running around and we're draining people's life force, becoming young kind of thing. You know?
Glorious Lord.
Keep going.
Well, that's fine. So, next.
You can't blame pop culture for stupidity. You can blame the gene pool. Very shallow in some ends. You can blame the education system, you can blame nature, nurture, whatever the heck you want to call it, but you can't blame pop culture for plain outright stupidity.
By definition, half the people below average intelligence.
Yes,
That's
but
scary.
that makes them average. You can't be below average without an average. It's just, believe it or not, IQs are going up. They've actually increased significantly in the last 50 some odd years.
Okay, that isn't just the test being skewed.
No, and it's scary. As a statistician, it hurts my head.
I still think people, but that's okay.
Oh, they're acting dumber. Now they have these wonderful devices that do stupid for them. Magic, hi, Apple. Oh, there's Eris, Apple. Oh my God! Throw an iPhone in the middle of a room, watch what happens.
Yep. The screen cracks.
That's because you didn't throw it right, you weren't nice enough.
Let's temporarily take a radical separatist view. Pop culture, get away from paganism. Let's let paganism be really, really hard to find so that only really, really interesting people find it.
You mean like it was before the internet?
Yes, exactly like that, when I had no idea what was going on. I think paganism was better back in the days when it took you 45 minutes to download porn.
One picture, right?
That is actually what I was thinking, yes.
Not even porn, just. Yeah.
Yeah, you know?
Well, they were boobs.
Well, no,
I mean, I'm pretty sure those are boobs. They're a little pixely, but
it was 45 minutes for one boob.
good enough.
What kind of picture resolution are we talking about?
We were talking about text-based.
Picture.
Yes, just asking nipples.
Okay?
broke them.
That's a
So
good
for those of you who are interested in the geeky kink event,
Segue!
I have cards for that too somewhere.
In that board somewhere.
Why do you want it to be harder to find? Just contrarian?
I'm actually, mostly, I'll be honest, I've actually had a really divided feeling on this for a while. When my husband's Then magazine came out with an issue talking about paganism becoming more accepted,
Right.
he asked the question of, do we want a paganism that's more accepted? Do we think paganism has benefited from a lack of acceptance or from what you might call, I guess, mild persecution? I don't think we call the past 10 years severe persecution. Has paganism actually benefited from that? I probably wouldn't have lost my Jewish faith I probably would have lost it a lot sooner if I hadn't had the sense of I need to hang on because I've been taught that I'm part of a small persecuted group and I need to help make this group survive. There was a great deal more esprit de corps, to be honest. So I don't know that I'm actually advocating that position, but I've been wondering for a long time if we would be better off. Solowinski, the organizer, had this quote, "Don't worry, folks, we'll weather this storm of approval and come out just as hated as ever." And he was talking about how it can be really hard to energize a movement or a group once it actually achieves acceptance, that it's easier to fight going uphill and recognize you've got obstacles than to say, well, now we're going downhill, we really ought to be going faster. Why aren't we?
Well, I mean, Omnimancy is one of the few groups out there that still has its secrets. I mean, everybody says, well, why don't you just publish everything on the internet and just make it free for everyone? Because it'd be dumb. You know, I mean, there's a reason
There
why
are
there's
some things you
initiations.
don't want out there.
Yeah, and the problem is that, you know, it's, I'd say forbidden knowledge makes it sound a lot more than it is, but I mean, it's like giving, like, the chess club crystal meth and loaded weapons. It's just a bad idea.
That was once! That was!
Pat, you were thinking about that way too much.
But, I mean, there is the people who are dedicated to whatever they're searching for, and they'll keep searching until they find it. And then there are people who would simply follow the vogue crowd. I mean, these days the vogue crowd goes after the ghost whisperers. It's all about the ghosts. But 10 years ago, it was about paganism. Everybody was pagan because of the craft and charmed and that kind of stuff at the time.
Hey, boobies.
And boobies, yes. They were attractive ladies, and it was all about boobies. And so, but that crowd has moved on. And at one point, it was even towards the magicians that way, probably back when the secret societies were more prominent. But that's the point, though. No, probably not this time. Yeah. But that's the point, though. It's a matter of the vogue crowd's always going to go because it's vogue to be so. They're never going to get that deep into it. And so that's the crowd that we look at and going, oh, well, it's so popular now, we can't motivate or whatever. Well, the hardcore people are going to be hardcore whether the vogue crowd likes it or not.
Are we done with vampires yet?
Excuse me?
Are we done with vampires?
We'll never be done with vampires.
The vampires,
We will never be done with
Not
vampires.
if I can.
that and zombies.
No, zombies are way
Zombies
more
are-
recent than
hey,
vampires.
Yes.
I am, yeah, that's where
Yes.
I'm going. I'm all about dead people.
I just hope they just drop the sparkly ones.
I guess
That's where I'm going.
Although I can make an
Are we
argument
done
about
yet?
extremely old ricey vampires. We'll come back to that later. One of the things that I think is sort of a benefit is that very, very few people are raised pagan.
Yes.
Very, very few people are pagan because that's what their parents do. Many other religions, you are whatever you are because it's what your parents did. Case in point, right?
But then people have
And then at some point, in order to become pagan, you have to have rejected what your family brought you up as, and that's a level of that persecution in the first place, even if it's that persecution in your own home. Continue.
Flag on the flag.
What?
Flag on the flag.
What?
I was raised Irish Catholic.
Okay.
I am now Druid, concentrating on religion.
Sure.
Monologue.
Oh, well, I mean, are you talking about the whole thing about how Catholicism is sort of how you get paid?
Irish Catholic?
Irish
It's the same
Catholic?
freaking thing.
Veneration of the saints? Yeah. No, I mean,
Have you ever heard of Saint Bridget?
but there
Yeah.
are also a number of here's one of the things that I think is fascinating about that. Really, really devout Catholics become pagan. Because really, really devout Catholics are the ones who are actually doing
Reading the stories?
reading
Doing the stuff?
reading the stories, venerating the saints, working with Mary on a regular basis. You know, all of these sorts of things that are easy to go from there into a pagan direction. And that's something that I think is kind of interesting. Go ahead.
Adding to your point, a cousin of mine did what I would call Catholic magic. She was
Have you
trying
been to a
to.
baptism? That is magic. I've seen that happen.
I forget which saint, but she buried a statue of the saint in her yard so that, you know, it would help to get the house sold.
Have you ever seen a priest charge the communion wafers?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello,
Okay.
zombies.
And then they feed it to the talk
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
You can see, you can spot a pagan
So-
from 20 feet at any Catholic church. They're sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
Oh my God, give me that energy. No, I'm not eating that. That's cannibalism.
I believe that Soma's being in front had a point.
Sorry.
No, I wanted to agree. I mean, I was raised Catholic. I was sent to Catholic school, and you know, I was kind of like, oh,
But it's the same thing. It's the same music,
Right, it's
a
just
different
different.
dance.
Yeah.
That's how I've always explained. Same music, different dance.
And we're actually allowed to call our magic magic.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of whether you use a serious.
It's not magic if God approves, therefore it's not magic. That was
Oh,
you
healing
gave
touch
me
Reiki.
Well, I mean, it's
Wait a minute.
intercessionary. It's theurgy. You're
Yeah,
always having God do it.
We have a hand up.
Settle down.
Uh-oh.
A lot. No, Paris time. No, a lot of old Italian women from, like, I'm mostly Italian, a little bit Irish. They all have altars loaded with saints, burning candles, burning incense. A lot of the stregoneria, help stuff is like a syncretism, and then there's stregoneria lurking in the background. We make the jump to polytheism real easy. And the same thing with, like, there's a lot of women who are into Mary, but when they start seeing Isis and Diana, they go, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it's I think for some ethnic groups, it's an easy jump.
Yes.
And that's the point you guys were making.
What's funny about that though is that if you told them that, they
Slap you.
no. No, my grandmother did this, it's okay.
Well, bless your heart.
But your grandmother did this, but did you know your grandmother was a witch?
Did you know your grandmother learned it from your grandmother, from her grandmother, and they were pagan?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm not in any way saying
I'm
that
sorry
people
to
should
tell them
stop
to
being
go over
Catholic or
yourself.
move over to other things or stuff like that. I'm just saying that there is a piece there where there's almost always still going to be a level of that you have to do a certain buy-in to become pagan.
Yeah.
That I think.
Otherwise, you end up just hanging out with friends.
Now, I mean, I know people who are raised Blue Star, who were born into a Blue Star family, have lived their whole life. They had their little crisis of faith around like 14, 15. Then they came back to it because they were like, no, actually, I agree with pretty much everything Mom does. That kind of thing. But there are very rare cases so far. Most of the pagan-raised people I know either are still pagan or they're just atheists.
Or they're...
And not militant atheists. They're just like, I'm not going to argue with Mom and Dad. I just don't believe it. I don't think anybody's right. I'm done talking about it. And that's fine too. I'm sorry, you were starting to say something when I tried
They're
talking.
just young.
What?
The other part is they're just young.
Oh, that too.
They haven't had that full crisis.
Right, it's that whole thing of, all right, let's see how you feel when you're like 32.
Hand fasting or prison marriage?
Okay, I believe there are several more questions.
Yes, we should get back to topic.
It's okay, we have time. We just finished with the
Number 4.
drawing from.
Almost there.
No, we haven't started number 5. We just, how does your tradition draw from pop culture?
Well, Pat. So Pat, how do we answer that?
Drawing from is 5 on my list. What is?
Right.
Yeah.
We're on-
Yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
We're on five.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
All right then.
Even though we broke away, we still know where we're supposed to be.
Yes,
So
That's where the elders.
yes.
shall
Clarify.
I re-ask the question and then we go through, or?
Yes.
Sure.
All right. Does your path draw from pop culture at all, and if so, how?
Yes! We draw a significant amount from pop culture. On a very, very basic level, we actually have done a series of rituals, a couple of different series of rituals that are specifically focused on pop culture things. Last winter we did a set that was about childhood stories where we did Alice in Wonderland, we did The Last Unicorn, we did a Dr. Seuss ritual, we did a Peter Pan ritual, we did a Winnie the Pooh ritual. All of those were significant parts of that year's work. This time around we did a series of rituals about heroes, and amongst those we did Buffy, we did Doctor Who, we did Firefly, talking about different kinds of heroes, people who are, and different ways in which you can be a hero. And we closed that one out with Bill Murray's character from Groundhog Day, which actually, seriously, go watch Groundhog Day again. It's a fantastic film, but then think about it in terms of, I don't know, his approximately 10,000 years spent doing that and Buddhist understandings and stuff. It's great. On a larger Blue Star level, there are a significant number of Blue Star people who work with some deities that first showed up in Shakespeare. Titania, Oberon, and the Puck are all folk that we work with and do deity invocation with, and more than one person has them as their patron or patroness, and that is a complicated thing because there's also a chunk of us who are basically allergic to the Fae. But that's one piece there, and that, I mean, sure, it's from what, like 16 something, but that was pop culture.
Yeah.
That was pop culture. Many of the people in Torchlight itself have our understandings of Odin and of Loki are heavily, heavily influenced by American Gods, the book by Neil Gaiman. Most of the time, the Odin that I perceive, see, etc., is wearing a nicely tailored gray suit, and he's got a well-trimmed beard, and he just looks like a respectable guy who totally is selling you the thing that he's supposed to be selling you for the amount of money that it's worth. Absolutely. I swear to God.
Which God?
Yeah. So yeah, we definitely do work with pop culture there. Also, some of the deities, and this is more on personal practice level, some of the deities that show up in the Discworld series of novels are folk that we actually work with. Anoia, who is the goddess of things that get stuck in your kitchen drawers. In my family, in my home, we have a festival for her the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, where we clean all of our kitchen appliances and then decorate them with like loops of stuff, and then we put on a crown made of forks and spoons and light some candles and sing songs and tell them that we appreciate them. Because seriously, I am really deeply appreciative of my refrigerator. If I didn't have a refrigerator, food storage would be much more difficult. I love my stove. I love that I can light it and it is fire and I can cook food on it. I love my toaster. What else makes toast? Toasters. All right.
You can make toast in the oven.
No, that's lies.
Then the toaster would be so sad. Please don't be so mean to Oster.
That's not what Mom does.
Don't be mean to Oster.
The Walmart.
What?
It's a Walmart brand.
What? The Oster? Oster.
Was that on holiday or Star?
No. We don't do anything from Oster to the toaster.
Only for
No. But, so yes, We draw from pop culture both on the level of like, here's some concepts that we can work with, which is a lot of what we were doing with the series of rituals over the past year. It was like, hey, let's look at how we can think about our aspects of our personality through the different characters in Winnie the Pooh. Which, I mean, some people will talk about, let's look at how we can talk about clinical depression as Eeyore, that sort of thing.
Schizophrenia?
But the specific piece of Puck, Titania, and Oberon, well, that's Christopher Robin.
Only if he was over 18.
But the Puck, Titania, Oberon thing is a very, very definite, we interact with them. And they are definitely pop culture, and they're people. I'm done.
Stabby.
No. I don't really think that we deal a lot with pop culture in my group at all. We've attempted a few things. They haven't always worked out, so we kind of stick with the tried and true. I don't know. I like a lot of the stuff that he said. Might be something to explore. I don't know if the rest of the coven would appreciate it, but we'll see. Thank you.
I will admit that because my group does a lot of research and come across things that just simply don't have names, and so we have to name them. And so since we are a bunch of pop culture geeks, movie buffs, we have a tendency of naming things that happen to fit based on the movie that we might have seen. And so it works out. Sometimes we name things stupid, like, call it Gak Blasters or stupid like that. That doesn't even exist anymore.
The Glenda Bubble?
Huh?
The Glenda Bubble.
No, we never did, well, we do spells like that. We don't call them. We even called a shield a herbal essence shield to mock one of our students. It's like, oh, that's an herbal essence shield. It's like, oh, that's too obnoxious. Now we're going to call it herbal essence shield from now on. You ever see the herbal essence commercials back in the day?
The ones with the orgasming cheeks?
Yes, exactly. So, and so
yes, I know that one. Very well.
Actually, now tied to that from like the people don't know what the reference is anymore, but that's what's called in the litany now. So yeah, we do that. So we have a bunch of stories that we refer to as don't be stories, where people really screw up. It's like don't be that person. That's what they did. So we constantly draw from pop culture because when you're talking about magic, a lot of magic is symbolism. And if you don't understand the symbol, I mean, the part of the problem is I know a lot of magicians that are sitting there trying to read grimoires from 100 or 1,000 years ago. And the problem is they get little pieces and stuff like that. You're never going to get at the same level as the person who wrote it. Why? You don't live in that culture. We live in the culture of technology. We're running around with cell phones that you talk to and it goes grab something across the world. I mean, you can go to a Russia site and be down in Florida just watching a movie and pulling from a Russian site and have it just jacked into the TV there. I mean, think about that. You can talk to people across the world in real time. They didn't have that 100 years ago. They didn't have that 1,000 years ago. Unless you're astral traveling, and then, it's like, that's not a difference. And so the culture that we live in now, Omnimancy is, eye deep in that kind of thing. It's a matter of, we do technological magic, if you will. We perceive it in those terms. It allows us to advance it and keep empowering it. It also allows us to try to analyze what everybody else is doing, because that's what people do. We're not just big people simply going, well, we accept what's there. We go, well, why is it there? That's what, our current, culture is about. Not just it does, we want realism. I mean, think about the stuff that came out in the 70s. Think about Battlestar Galactica in the 70s versus the recent one, okay? They tried to make the more recent one that much more gritty, that much more realistic. Whether you like it or not, that is the trend.
Sex and explosives.
Yeah. Well, I love both.
Big boom,
I
big
love both.
explosions.
I love both.
See, but I find that interesting that you're talking about technology because
Yes.
in my practice, We don't use a lot of technology. I don't even allow lighters in circle. You need to light your candles with matches. So I'm trying to keep the old traditions in there. And,
Well,
you know,
but that's the difference is that in Omnimancy's case, we're sitting there going, we basically went from the premise, anything that's out there is crap, it has to be revalidated. You know what I mean? What actually works, what is actually going on. Usually it's a matter of you do this entire ritual, and maybe only one part that actually mattered and the rest of it didn't, but no one actually knows why you did all that anymore. Because we're not in that culture anymore. We don't understand all the symbols anymore. And so
no,
it's
true,
better
because
to...
I do get that question a lot, why do we do this, and this?
Exactly the problem.
And I have to explain it, but...
And unless you're there to discover it and move it forward, you don't know anymore. And that's part of the problem. So I want something that people would know, people would understand. And I'm not saying I'm not having some of those problems already with newer students who weren't there for the research.
Yeah.
And so unless they ask, they don't necessarily know why we do this now. And so that gets lost. I'm trying to rectify that. But we live in a world where we have wikis, where we're starting to write stuff up. So now you have a litany, and you have where this stuff came from. So now it's like magical research papers, for lack of a better term. And that's where that's all coming from. So I'm not trying to go from an old tradition and preserve it. I'm trying to create something brand new that's more relevant in today's society and how we think. And 100 years from now, it's not going to be relevant. There's a thing called radionics, and radionics is all about you have dials and crystals and things of that nature, and it's how things worked in the 1920s through 50s and stuff like that. People use that symbolism. Where it's like, okay, I got it, I pulled a knob on the TV and it turned on. I turned a dial and it did something. When was the last time you turned a dial on a TV? You know? So that's the point though. We don't live in that culture. So that symbolism no longer resonates with us anymore. So radionics would have to be reinvented differently now than it would that. Yeah.
You still pull.
Kind of. You
It's all similar.
Yeah. Well, you understand my point. So the symbolism has to resonate, or else it's not going to work.
Oh yeah.
So that's why we take a very different approach. And instead of trying to resurrect a culture we simply do not live in and never will understand the same way people who did live in it, we try to go, okay, live in this culture. Let's take magic and concepts of that of ancient concepts, but reapply it in modern day context.
And we do read that thoughts.
Yes, I know.
We take the old school, our rituals are based in a method that any Indo-European deity, no matter who they are, would be able to show up and be like, oh, that's the part where we do the thing. I get this, I understand that.
Have some vague notion of what's going
Yeah,
on.
they have a clue, right? That being said, we put our own wonderful spin on it. We have done, and I'm just going off of a list that I pulled out of my head in like 5 minutes. The Disney ritual, themed to a mouse with very big lawyers. That's Disney, D-I-S-K-N-E-E. Not to be confused with this little mouse. We did the Percy Jacksonville theme. We did a BDSM themed the summer solstice, right?
It's a summer solstice walking ritual. We didn't actually go walking, right?
We did a trans
I was
BDSM.
playing the flute in the hallway for that one.
Yes,
Yes.
and I was hiding in the kitchen.
It was raining.
It was raining.
Yep, we did again, we can tell who's been here. We did a punk Lunasa.
Lunapalooza.
Yes, Lunapalooza. We did a pirate-themed, again, I like the summer ones, can you tell?
What?
Pirate-themed summer solstice.
It was also.
Yeah, we ran around Brunswick saying R and got a couple people screaming back, R, and it's not the U. What?
Sure, it wasn't like talking about Pirate Day.
No, it was in the middle of the summer, it was my birthday weekend, and I was drunk. We did the last, we did the Trekkie Writ, aka the geek ritual, which was pretty much anything sci-fi geek
Was it
related.
Doctor Who the
Did you shoot the red shirts?
Yes, Doctor Who was.
Doctor Who was the gatekeeper.
Our red shirts would be equivalent to our gatekeeper. No, Doctor Who was not the gatekeeper. Wait, that was the one where I was the main invocation for that one. I fell on my face for that. I have a wonderful scar from that ritual.
I'm not sure what you're talking.
That's where that one came from. We'll get there. I digress. We use themes. If somebody has an idea, we'll spin it into a ritual. But still keep the basic old school and the new school and we're the party people, please. Moving on.
So speaking of stealing from pop culture, I'm going to do a 7th and 8th stretch. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm going to stretch because I'm getting sleepy.
We should all stretch.
Seriously, that's good for
Don't
you.
follow his lead. He's just trying to get you
He's doing it at the
art
same time nearby.
He just wants to see the ladies move down.
Whatever.
Go to record.
Speaking as a bisexual man, I think that's definitely only half.
And the jump. And the muscles and I don't know.
I haven't actually done
I
that
have not
before.
been interested in guys in so long, please enlighten me. What is it?
Pants. They wear nice pants.
Oh, okay. Pants.
I tell you that.
So the answer is yes, I can.
That's all right. So, in terms of Discordianism and pop culture, Discordianism pervades things. Discordianism is like the Force. It has a light side and a dark side that holds the universe together. No, wait, that's duct tape. I often get the two confused. Discordianism is Discordianism is not particularly what we would think of as a Reconstructionist religion, per se. It kind of just hangs out, and whatever's going on, Discordianism. Well, here's my personal belief. My personal belief is that pop culture is inherently ridiculous.
Yes.
And nothing could be that ridiculous by accident.
Nope.
And I personally want to believe that pop culture is the work of Eris, because I think I'd be very depressed if I decided it was the work of Satan. But given those two major possibilities, I'm gonna swing with Eris.
She's more fun to swing with. Did you ever watch The Bee in Apartment 23?
I don't think I've ever heard of the Bee in Apartment 23.
I've seen
You should watch
The Bee in
episodes.
Apartment
The
23?
Bee in Apartment
Is there a
23.
vampire in it?
No, there is Kristen Ritter playing Eris, pretty much.
Okay.
Her name is Chloe, but she's definitely an avatar.
What program is this?
Oh, it was a television show. It made it through like most of 2 seasons, except for like half of it never actually got aired. You can watch it on Netflix. Oh, it's on Netflix.
I will watch it with Alex.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Definitely do it.
Cool.
Hilarious. Oh, and it's got what's his name from Dawson's Creek?
That guy.